Very happy to see a very engaged audience. Let's hope you get the full spirit and zeal today. I am the last one between you and celebrations. I'll make it as simple as possible. And let's feel free to also make it interactive rather than me standing up with a very formal Q&A in the end. Let's make this as interactive as possible. I'll try my best. I hope you will try your best to make this interactive. I thank Pradeep for something very important which he mentioned, which is the world is all about storytelling. And what I'm going to do today is storytelling. Absolutely. What your mama and papa used to do when you were kids, that's what we do throughout our lives. Right? So that's the most important part of almost all our interactions and debates. Okay? So with this, I begin. I hope technology supports me today. Wow, we already have some issues. Okay, thanks a lot. So, good, we are up and running. And what I want to do today is take you through some very important changes happening in the industry. I belong to the IT industry. I have more than 21 years of experience. I am standing here at my individual capacity as a thought leader. And I wanted to share with you a few thoughts on what's happening overall in the IT industry. Also, what are the most important expectations which most organizations have from people, all of you, from us, and what is the pulse of requirements coming from most organizations. Then we have a bit of a very interesting topic around clouds and around big data as well. I will not dwell too much, but I'll just try to give you a sneak preview. And in the end, I will also share with you how all these changes are making a big impact to the way we see the ecosystem around us. Now, when you go out to the market as a sales guy or as a marketing person or as a telecom domain specialist or as an HR professional, you will see that you are surrounded by an ecosystem. The ecosystem is your fellow salespeople, your manager, your manager's manager, your director, your business head, your partner with whom you are doing business, your channel manager, your customers, right? All of them are very important stakeholders. And some of that entire equation is changing, and as dynamic people, we all need to be ready to embrace these changes. So let's begin our presentation. I have rightly called this presentation as Agents of Change. I want all of you to be these agents of change, and let's begin. Now, for any company, key lasting assets, I think all of us understand 4 top key lasting assets. The top one is brand. The second one is people. I think any company is built of people, and that is the most important asset for any organization. The third one is business processes and applications, which can transform with time, which can transform based on business environment, based on exogenous variables, and most important, information. So I would say two parts of this which are most important is especially information and people. And information is one which is really facing the big bad storms. So what we are seeing is information is growing substantially. There is virtually insatiable demand for data which is getting generated, right? And it is becoming very difficult for organizations and to manage this data and to draw value out of it. So this is all about information growth. Just a very simple statement that in the year 2000, we generated approximately 2 exabytes of new information a year. Today we do that in a day. So the amount of information generated is absolutely huge. And just a simple example, I'm staying in this hotel nearby. This hotel has provided an iPod to each and every room, and all the controls of that entire room are controlled by the iPod. So look at the amount of information being generated by a device which was not really, traditionally not required. But what they are trying to do is something very interesting. They are trying to capture my profile in terms of my likes and dislikes. And maybe when I visit them next time, they already have my key information in place, the insights are in place, and I may get a very personalized service from them, which really makes them their permanent customer. So this is a very interesting thought which we see, and the number of devices creating this information is huge and expanding. Okay? 90% of this information created is unstructured. There are various numbers spreading around in the industry. Information generated worldwide will be 50x by 2020. Some people say 44x, but all those numbers clearly indicate that the rate at which information is growing, which is impacting all parts of our businesses, is absolutely huge. It is very difficult for organizations to keep up because the number of employees which grow will not be as high as the scale with which information is growing. Some of the devices which are generating information, so more information is being created by devices than by humans. So examples are video surveillance, social media, mobile sensors, video rendering, gene sequencing, a big churner of information, medical imaging, geophysical exploration is huge, and smart grids. Right? So this is where most of the information gets created. Now, what we will do in the next few slides is that we will convey a message pictorially. And what I would like to do is I would like people to participate in this exercise and help us understand what this picture means. So anyone would want to take a shot at this? What does this picture mean?
Pollution.
Ancient, okay. Anything else? Why don't you stand up?
Pollution.
Do we have enough mics here? So, take a shot at it. Industrialization, okay. What else?
Air pollution.
Pollution, correct. Pollution. What else? Okay. So, in a nutshell, what this, and this could be applied to all aspects of business. It could be applied to all aspects of IT industry. It could be applied everywhere. What this clearly indicates is old dilapidated infrastructure, or old dilapidated processes, or old dilapidated businesses which are changing. And today,
Connectivity.
okay, network connectivity is all technical words, but what we see from here is organizations have been very, very static. Business processes have been very, very static, and they have been huge and heavy. What we want to see in the world today is systems which are flexible yet stable and powerful. This is a spider's web. A spider's web is flexible enough to attract a lot of different insects. It moves, right? And once an insect is caught in the web, the insect can't move out. The spider's weight is also taken by this guy, and it can be recreated, and the spider can pounce on its prey. So what it essentially means is the world is looking for systems which are agile, flexible, yet stable enough. Agile and flexible does not mean that you lose the solidarity of the system. Right? So this is what it means. It could be applied anywhere. It could be applied to a relationship, it could be applied to a business, it could be applied to IT. Okay, what does this, what does this mean? Okay, teamwork is a good choice. I would want to look at it differently.
Hard work.
You know the context with which we are coming from. So apply the context to the picture. Okay, risk is somewhere near. Effort is very near. Okay. Okay, so what this truly means is the old systems, like I said, apply the context to the picture. The old systems required a lot of heavy lifting. This picture indicates heavy lifting, right? Forklifting. What the world today needs, and the only way we can, permanently move out of recessions is by ensuring that our businesses are not governed this way. In fact, our businesses should look something like this. What does this mean? Two very, very important keywords here. Building block. Yeah, there you are. What's the next one? Modular. Okay, building block, modular, pretty similar.
Right place. Right
Okay.
place.
Pluggable. You have a new merger. You have existing ecosystems which were created for one company. Suddenly company X and company Y merge. IT systems have to merge, one problem. Bigger problem, cultures have to merge. Bigger problem, organization structures become impossible to work with. But if you create your base organization as a pluggable structure, you can easily add new parts of an ecosystem and make this work as one unit. Pluggability and modularity are the two keywords here. What does this mean? Sorry guys, this laser pointer is really failing me today. What does this mean? Firing picture, right?
Aggressive.
No, girls.
Security.
I can't hear anything. It means is what organizations today need is not a way of the past where you used to bolt yourself completely, right? What organizations, and again this is a measure of agility, right? The more you bolt yourself from top to bottom, you are protected but you can't do anything, right? So what organizations need is agility and flexibility, but what they also need is the fact that you should not just completely bolt yourself. You know, it's the same old thing. If you use security systems, then none of you can use your iPhones. The very fact that IT organizations and all organizations today allow you to use all sorts of social media, now something has happened. I'm sorry guys. They allow you to use all forms of social media because they are having information-centric security systems which can give you environments which have sufficient flexibility yet are secure enough. Right? So this is a very simple message, and the reason why I did this exercise was I want all of you to start thinking. What does this mean? I think it's very simple now. Equate it with the last one. Right? People want to become something like this. They want to use modern tools and techniques for warfare. Okay, what does this mean?
Trust.
It is follow the herd mentality which is wrong. So organizations do not, they want to innovate, and I think what Pradeep mentioned, we had a very interesting session on innovation. Organizations want to look at means and methods by which everyone in the organization can contribute to the creativity of the organization. What does this mean?
Technology.
Automation. Going forward, everyone wants to look at standardization and automation. Okay?
Cloud.
I think this is pretty simple. You want to see through clear skies. You don't want to see hazy clouds. What is this? It indicates something very, very clearly. Don't go by
Asian.
what you see on the technology. Again, it shows dilapidated technology. It shows old hard drives which are rusted. The world is changing in terms of technology. Okay? What is this? Security, stability, robustness. What is this? Okay, it could be creativity, it could be due diligence, it could be a thought process before which you take a final decision. What is this? Okay, compare this to this. So one way of catching fish is on the edge where you could fall at any second, right? That's not a very smart way to do it. The smarter way to do it is do it like this. But you can do it like this only if you have created organizations which are scalable and creative and innovative. This is what truly signifies where this entire world is moving to. Do we want any of this? Do you want any of this? You see a swimming pool which is empty. Waste of time, waste of money, waste of power, waste of everything. You see a swimming pool where you can't do anything. Right? Oversubscription, over capacity, right? Overutilization. You actually don't want any of these. You want optimal utilization and sweating of your assets, right? That's where the world is moving. The world is moving towards the virtual desktops. The world is moving towards client computing. And most importantly, we as users, we as the consumer, is defining the shape of technology. Our usage of applications on smartphones is truly driving the way the world is moving. Gone are the days where companies used to manufacture products based on their whims and fancies. Companies now manufacture products based on what they hear from you on social media or through various means, right? And we hear a lot of buzzwords, we hear about all these, right? But this is where, from a technology standpoint, we see this change. The world of mainframes transformed into minis, transformed into PC/microprocessor, then transformed into networked and distributed computing, and finally is transforming into cloud computing. The best way to define cloud computing is that swimming pool diagram which I showed you. You don't need oversubscription, you don't need undersubscription. You need optimal subscription, right? You need to create shared services by which those shared services could be utilized by a larger audience in comparison to dedicated islands of usage. That is the best way to describe cloud computing. Some examples, I'll not spend too much of time. The mainframe era, guys, this needs to be replaced. The mainframe era had a lot of, mainframe and mini had a lot of dilapidated systems. They had custom LSI chips, architecture was monolithic, memory was in kilobytes, the language used was COBOL, there were dumb terminals and huge on cost. The client server computing, the memory was in megabytes, network was IP, Ethernet, all of us know that. The data model was RDBMS, the applications were ERP, CRM, SCM, they were the killer applications. End user device was a Windows PC. The cost was optimal. Come cloud computing, it's all x86 architectures, virtualized scale-out architectures, memories in terabytes and sometimes petabytes as well. Network, IPv6 or IPv4, storage, disk/flash, flash technology, I'm sure all of you have heard about flash. If you have not, please spend some time. Data model is NoSQL and Hadoop. How many of you have heard of Hadoop, especially the telecom guys? I will be surprised if you have not heard about Hadoop because you need to know that. Any telecom guy can explain what is Hadoop? No? Anyone? This is not a technology language. This is something which you should know. This is where the industry is moving. So you should know this. Anyways, the killer application is real-time analytics. For the cloud world, so I talked about cloud. I still not talked about analytics, but the killer application of the cloud is real-time analytics. And of course, end-user devices are tablets and smartphones. Right? Now, this is where we are today. We have known to see systems. Just a second. Which one is the laser pointer here? Which one? Which button? This one? Okay. So we have seen conventional data centers, almost all of them have it. We know our conventional data centers to be trusted, controlled, reliable and secure. That is what we think. There are service providers who provide us cloud computing and we feel that their services are very, very flexible, on demand, pay by the drip and efficient. Right? What we truly want to achieve is we want to achieve best of both worlds. We want to achieve this as well as this. There is no use of flexible, dynamic, on-demand, efficient technology if it is not trusted, controlled and reliable and secure, right? It's two sides of an equation, right? Now what we truly are looking at is, we are looking at first virtualizing our existing data centers, which means we move to a services-oriented architecture, right? That provides us the best of both worlds. It provides us technologies which give you best of both, which is called hybrid computing, which means me as a customer, some of my applications are still running on my own data center. I have not outsourced it to anyone. They are under my control, they are secure, but they are virtualized, which means I'm providing them as a service to my end users. And for telecom guys, virtualization is a very important subject. You should know virtualization. Do read as much as you can. I can assure you, your first interview, people will ask you about virtualization and clouds. So you should understand virtualization. Then, so after virtualizing our internal assets, we also, so some of our core applications which are core to our business will run on our own data center. Some of our applications will run on a third-party service provider data center and will be charged by the drip. But both these resources will be under our control. This is what we call hybrid computing. Of course, we will do tiering of our applications and say some of our applications run here, some of our applications run here, right? You need a virtualization layer, you need an information infrastructure layer, you need a security. Once you do that, what it essentially means is that you have to look at 3 layers of cloud. The first layer is called your information, your infrastructure transformation. So anyone who wants to implement cloud has to look at infrastructure transformation, has to look at application transformation as well, because some of your static old applications can run on the cloud, some of them can't. You also want to develop new applications which are friendly towards the cloud. So that is where you will look at application transformation. And the third layer is end user provisioning, which is all about end user computing, right? It is about your tablets, smartphones, all those devices. And how do you configure them with the cloud? But once you do that, you have got a consolidated repository of all your information, right? You have got a cloud which is available as a service to internal users, external users. But that information is of no use to you unless you can extract the value of this information, turn it into insight, and use it to amplify your business. That is the most important part of big data analytics, which is usually looked at as a separate process after you have built a cloud. But not necessarily it is linked to a cloud. You could do big data analytics on your traditional infrastructure as well. What is big data analytics? We will see in the detail. Okay, so if you really peel the onion, we have already looked at cloud computing. You will see much more. And these are some of the examples of organizations which have taken benefit of big data analytics. You have got NYSC, you have got Fidelity, Bank of America, Docomo, AT&T, Amazon, Walmart, Staples, ExxonMobil, T-Mobile, Zurich. There are lots of gaming softwares, there are online retail companies. You have Amazon, you have Monster, you have Blue Cross Blue Shields, healthcare, you have government organizations, you have traffic monitoring, you have traffic analysis. There are thousands of examples in the world where people have taken a lot of benefit from big data. Now let's spend some time here. So all of us feel that clouds, I'm not sure whether you agree with me or not, but cloud has the potential of transforming IT. Remember that one slide that I showed you about two swimming pools, one was empty and one was full, right? That signifies resource utilization. So the biggest benefit of a cloud is resource utilization. Second, I showed you a slide on standardization and transformation. That is the second biggest benefit of cloud computing. And the third and the most important benefit is flexibility and agility. It makes your IT environment flexible and agile to your business. All those have been depicted as part of the screenshots which I showed you, right? Now, so cloud can transform IT, right? But it will not transform business. Cloud is an infrastructure play. It is not a business play. But if you harness big data analytics well, you could potentially transform your business, and we can see some examples of that as well. We see that big data, which was the biggest problem at one point in time, has now become the biggest opportunity which needs to be exploited. And this is the same thing which I mentioned. Move on. Okay, some examples, retail, some use cases are CRM, store siting and layout. When you walk into a DMart or when you walk into a Walmart, the very fact that items are placed next to each other based on their affinity is because of big data analytics. And we have a live case for this which worked well for Shoppers Stop, where placement of products in racks truly helped double the business. We have many examples of this the world over, but citing of products or layout is a very, very classic example. Fraud detection, prevention. Before someone is doing a fraud transaction on your credit card, if that transaction can be blocked before the transaction actually happens, then it is useful for you. But if you get a message after the fraud happened, what use is that to you? Nothing, right? So big data analytics has the power to do that for you. Supply chain optimization, financial services, especially algorithmic trading. Algorithmic trading has not started in India, but it will start, right? India is a huge market, and though many of us believe that the price of our stocks are dependent on market sentiments, I am sure at some point in time algorithmic trading will become very important. But even if it is market sentiments, there is a huge part of big data analytics which is called sentiment analysis, right? Where I can figure out the sentiment of my company's brand amongst all of you. I can actually give all of you a photometer in your hands, or I can run a small application on your smartphone and I will display a small survey, single page survey. Within 5 minutes I can figure out whether this audience likes the smartphone or likes the Google Android or likes the iOS within minutes. Now that is a good representative of what big data analytics can do. Then you have risk analysis, fraud detection, portfolio analysis, right? So very, very good examples. So I'll just share a little bit of it after some time. Manufacturing, government, media and telecommunication, energy, healthcare and life sciences. The examples are numerous. Now these are some real programs which are run while doing big data analytics. So hear me carefully. This is good. Some of the techniques which are used, for example, market-based recommendations. So what are market-based recommendations? Based on things like the trends in the market. So by some method, I understand the trends of this particular stock in the market for the last 6 years, apply some real lifetime things which are happening as of now, and I can now predict and say what will happen to the stock going forward. So this is called market-based recommendations. It could be, for example, it could be oil and gas. Now, oil and gas from a particular well, I have been able to extract a lot of oil, but there are certain things which have happened in the subcontinent because of which I know that there will be no more oil coming out. So this is an easy correlation for me to say that history has shown me this. I apply this history to some real-time feeds in terms of what is happening, and this is my response in terms of what will happen in the future. Second could be market basket analysis. Very, very interesting. So this is the same thing, retail store. Now if someone has bought a hair trimmer, he would also want to buy a good looking hair comb, or he would like to buy accessories for his hair trimmer. You know, there could be various complementary and supplementary products which, sorry, this is working properly? Okay, there could be a lot of complementary and supplementary products which could be sold based on a particular sale. Now, if me as a Flipkart user, the next time I log in, it immediately lets me know that the last time you bought this, customers who fall under the same category as you have also been showing a lot of interest in these products. Now, I immediately have done a correlation, right? I wanted to buy a headphone last time. This time Flipkart suggested me some music. Flipkart suggested me a new speaker set, right? So there could be a lot of such affinities which could be leveraged to increase your business. Then customer lifetime value. I think this is very, very important, especially applicable for retail banking. If I am an HNI for a particular bank, or if I am a customer who does not provide any value to the bank, why does the bank need to invest in sending me promotions? Yet I keep getting calls from people, do you want to buy this card, do you want to buy that? They don't even know whether I have that card or not. Now, if I am not a valuable customer to this bank, why do I get calls? But if I am a valuable customer, then maybe I don't get any calls. So, you know, how do you aggregate the lifetime value of a customer or a segment of customers and then run campaigns to increase business for that particular segment? This could apply almost anywhere. User-based recommendations based on history, social, and environment. I think self-explanatory, and we have seen this happening in number of examples. Right? Churn analysis. So as a telecom customer, if I lose customers, then the chances are very high that my most profitable, my most revenue generating end customer, his friends will also go out. Will go move to some other operator. So if there is one customer who gives me 10,000 rupees a month, his closest friends will also go out. If I can in advance analyze those close associations, these are called socio-economic graphs, and then run campaigns on these customers and make them my permanent loyal customers, give them free coupons. If I can analyze where they are, and if there is a nearest coffee cafe day, if I send them a coffee cafe day voucher, then I have increased brand loyalty. Sentiment analysis. What do you guys feel about the latest action on Apple versus Google or versus Samsung? Now, if I do that, that's called sentiment analysis. Very simple, right? But the algorithms which are used to run this are very, very complex. You don't have to run them. You have to strategize them. Right? Demand analysis, price analysis, right? Traffic analysis. City of Mumbai traffic analysis will be great. If I can figure out what are the best ways of going from point A to point B with minimal interventions, then my job is done. It will be a great boon for India as a country. This could be applied across healthcare, retail banking, telco, distributed enterprise, loans, marketing campaigns, retail, airlines, government, oil and gas, advertising, name it. I think the earliest example which I know of is airlines. Their prices are completely based on demand, are based on how close you are to the flying time, are dependent on a lot of variables which sometimes we don't understand. Sometimes we say, oh hey, the flight is just 15 minutes away and this guy is charging me 9,000 rupees for a ticket. Right? He has a logic behind it. So people have done that manually, but now is the time when all these things are being done in an automated fashion. Some examples of how big data should look like. One example is Google. Look at the number of queries a day. 900 millisecond average response time. Imagine the number of servers, imagine the amount of population addressing Google, and 900 millisecond average response is phenomenal. They would have done something special, right? All the power of big data analytics. So you have to look at scale. Facebook, it's all about collaboration, right? Look at the number of active users, look at the number of interactive objects, look at the number of new photos a day. It was all about this guy doesn't work for me. Yes. It was all about agility, it was all about real-time collaboration and self-service. Amazon.com, look at the number of customers, look at the number of products, look at the number of real-time recommendations. You are surfing something and suddenly you start getting recommendations. Right? It's that real time. Okay, so what all this means, the concept of clouds, those initial pictures which I showed you, they show you a trend in terms of what the world is moving into, is creating a new structure, is creating a new organization. This was the classic organization where you had the line of business, you had the business intelligence analyst, you had a firewall. This is not a technical firewall, this is like discrete islands of people, and you had the IT department which had a database administrator, blah blah blah. This truly has to transform into a very, very integrated and engaged organization where all of them are working as one well-knit unit. So line of business user, business intelligence analysts, and a new role is created called data scientist. Then you have a data platform administrator. Data scientist is going to be the most well-paid job worldwide. It is going to be as well-paid as an actuary. So this is an area of interest. I would say it is evolving and transforming, but definitely worth looking at. So big data analytics, if I were to really sum it up in a very, very naive definition, the earlier world of business intelligence, BI, was all about what happened, where and when. But the world of big data, deep analytics is all about what will happen, how can we do it better, and how and why did it happen in the past. So answers to these three questions is what is big data analytics, and that is the big difference between business intelligence and big data analytics. Some examples of where. Okay, let's move on. Now, all this is making a big change in our ecosystem. So, if cloud becomes a reality, it is already becoming a reality. There are many cloud service providers. Cloud service providers, some examples I'll give you: Control S, Sifi, Wipro, HCL Infinite. These are all cloud service providers. Right? Airtel is also going, Bharti Airtel is going to become one more cloud service provider. Now, if a cloud service provider starts providing services to my end customers, so let's assume I am a vendor company, let's say ABC manufacturers. Now, rather than me supplying products to my end customer, now the cloud provider will provide IT services to that end customer. So now in my definition as a vendor, who is my customer? Guys, I see a few guys happily sleeping. Maybe we should switch back to the picture mode. Right? So, who is the new customer? For me, the cloud service provider becomes a new customer, right? And similarly for the end customer, who is the equipment provider? The service provider is the equipment provider. What happens to the channel partner? What happens to the system integrator? This entire ecosystem is becoming very complex, right? The definitions are changing. When you go out to the industry, you will see new definitions which are absolutely matured. And that is why it is important for all of us to be ready and embrace this transformation with an open heart. We are both at an inflection point and a tipping point in our evolution. Now, I think I'm pretty much to the end of my slides. So the reign of terror and torture is over. What I am doing is I'm going to articulate a few things which you as individuals, as executive professionals, and we as managers have to practice in the new world to be successful, right? It really stems from a lot of basic things which all of us know. I'm just trying to revive the basics. So for any leader, for any executive, it is very important for him to be passionate and most important a systems thinker. We will explain what systems thinker is. It is important for all of us to have very strong communication skills. If I am a leader, I should be able to evangelize my own technology, my own processes, my own products to my employees and take their buy-in rather than me dictating my principles on them. I need to ensure that I take their buy-in. If I take their buy-in, I can get better performance out of it. And the same applies to you as individuals as well, right? So then how do I evaluate my people? I need to do that continuously. And this is evolving. It is no longer an HR business partner's responsibility or just a business manager's responsibility. Today the HR business partner has to understand, has to get very close to the business. Even the business manager has to be very close to understanding HR fundamentals and be people oriented. It is important for these worlds to converge. Okay? So business evaluation, almost each and every field or division or business unit or function has to be business driven. It could be booking, it could be margin, it could be revenue. Finally, all companies survive on one simple formula, which is revenue minus expense divided by revenue. Revenue minus revenue is the total revenue you as a company earn. Expense is your total expense, where 70% is salaries of people, right? Divided by the revenue, which is your margin, right? Every business unit runs on one single formula. You may not know about it. You may go to your boss and the boss may say, look, I don't have any more headcount, I can't hire more, or I can't give you more salary. At the back of that business's mind, this formula is there somewhere, which is creating a havoc. Unless you increase your revenue or you decrease your operating expenses, this equation is not going to get positive. And there is also one more important formula. If revenue for any company is increasing by 100% year on year, then the expenses of that business unit cannot exceed by more than half of revenue growth. Which means if revenue grew by 100%, expenses cannot grow by more than 50%. If expenses cannot grow by 50%, do the mathematics in terms of how much more expense you can actually spend, which could be new people, which could be more salaries, which could be rewards, recognition, shares, whatever. Right? So everyone needs to be business oriented. And this is why for everyone to do an MBA is very important. Encourages multi-skilling and responsibility. I think the world is clearly moving towards all of us acquiring multiple skills and picking up combinational roles. Identifying, developing, retaining talent in sync with business needs. There is no point in you doing certifications which are not relevant to what you want to do in life. Or there is no point you investing in your skills in things which you will not do in future. Right? Similarly, for me as a business manager, there is no point in me investing in you as an employee on things which are not important for me, for my business. Right? It is very important for us to align all these things to the business. Knows, for the manager, knows the individuals in the team, runs competency assessments which are called stack rankings, and does organizational talent review in a very, very structured process. A lot of those concepts are changing. The old ways are not being looked at anymore. Very, very dynamic tools are now available. Link rewards to performance and competency assessments. It is, the world has moved out from the fact that you have 6 years of experience, so your salary should be 1.5x multiplied by the number of years of experience you have. Those definitions are gone. I have reported twice to people who are much more younger than me. I find absolutely comfortable with that. And those definitions of how much salary band you should be, all those definitions are withering away. The world has become very, very dynamic. It is purely dependent on your performance and nothing else. Okay? Everyone should be customer and partner focused, just like Sir mentioned. It could be internal customers, external customers. Speed of execution, all of us should demonstrate speed of execution. I think that is the hallmark. The world is becoming very, very agile, very dynamic. Practicing business in an ethical way, I think that goes without saying. Embraces, everyone should embrace the new organizational structure and the new processes going forward. A lot is changing here. Strong operational command of the business, just like what Pradeep mentioned. Deep diving your patch, deep diving your business is very, very important. I today see a lot of managers who say that, look, my team is there to manage the sales operations. Why should I get into the field and go and sell? I would say that is an old, dilapidated way of thinking. The world has changed. All of us have to be hands-on. All of us have to be on the streets. All of us have to support our business in all ways possible and look at how we add value to the ecosystem. It's all about symbiotic relationships than one way. Your manager needs something from you because you are his pillar. Right? Similarly, you also expect something from the manager and from the ecosystem. Right hiring, I think right hiring done is the best investment you could do on yourself. Resource leanness, I think this is important, especially in the way the market is shaping up now. Everyone should look at ways and means by which we can encourage resource leanness, resource optimization, and resource leverage. In a way, multi-skilling is one way to do it. Knowledge of broad industry business trends. I'm sure with social media around, all of you would be completely updated with what is happening in the world of telecom, in the world of HR, in the world of sales and marketing. Looking to reduce organizational latencies and improving organizational efficiency. So this is what I feel is in essence what an employee and what a manager is expected of. But at the heart of all this is mentoring, coaching, and motivation. I think that's very, very important. This is the old style of thinking where you had a hardline manager and a dotted line manager. But the new world is about multiple hardline relationships. It could be 2, 3, 4. Currently I have 4 managers. Right? That is the way the world is going. Some thoughts about top leaders. Humility, but blended with contagious passion. I think that's really understood by all of us. Paranoid. Everyone needs to be paranoid. But never scared, never truly at rest. Always dynamic and scalable. Everyone should have experienced failure, and I think Pradeep mentioned a lot about this. Everyone should have experienced failures and learn from their mistakes. Okay? Experiencing failure is absolutely good for you. Highly disciplined, but not regimented. They foster creativity, experiment, prototype. Values bright individuals, but worships teams, empowers his teams. I think that also was mentioned very well by Pradeep. Deflect praise, collect, accept the blame, give back. Truly, it's all about storytelling. And what I have done in the last 45 minutes, I believe, is tenuous.